Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Dan Carlicchio. I want to welcome you to another segment of Destination Health Podcast, where we find function in the dysfunctional world. Today, November 29th, we released the podcast that we did last week with Sheryne Willson, because it was really, really good. And we didn't get through everything that we wanted to get through. So we have part 2 going on right now. Now, it's going to go into December. If we need to do a part 3, we'll probably do it in January, or maybe we'll do it in December. We'll see, but we had a nice conversation the last time, right, Sheryne? Was it good?
It was amazing.
It was amazing, right? So she thought she was going to talk about macros, and she thought she was going to talk about working out, and she thought she was going to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But then I asked the first couple of questions, and after the podcast, she was like, oh my goodness, I've never been asked those questions before. Okay, well, we're going to continue on with those questions and those conversations. So don't think of it as you're in the hot seat. As we like to say here, we love to motivate, we love to educate, we like to inspire, because Sheryne, again, we don't know who's watching this, and we don't know whose life that we're going to touch. It's important to eat well and overcome blocks that way and stuff. We'll talk a little bit about that maybe. So how are you today, Sheryne?
I'm doing great. It's a good day.
It's a good day. So Sheryne and I, we always have a half an hour conversation before we even go on to the podcast. So we did that. We solved some of the ills of the world, but we're going to solve some other ills right now. So just a real brief bio: Innermind specialist, transformation trauma coach, health and wellness expert, clinical hypnotherapist. She's going to hypnotize me. I may quack like a duck. NLP master, mind practitioner, spiritual healer, energy healer, does EFT, does a lot of interesting things. So, Sheryne, we spoke about some of the stuff that you went through in your lifetime the last time, right?
Yeah.
We did. We went
dove.
What's that?
I feel like we really deep dove into some things.
We did. So now we're going to continue on, and we're going to we're going to talk a bit about now the body, the soul, and the mind, because what happens is that in life, you kind of have to, you have to heal all 3 of them, right? It can't just be one, right? So again, simple, heart attack, you got to heal your body. You have to go through that transformation, right? But then there's a relationship with food. There's a relationship with yourself. There's self-esteem. There's self-respect. There's self-confidence. Something brought you to that point, right? Something brought you to that point. So how do you heal all 3 of them? What do you do? Her eyes like this. Her eyes went, whoa. How do you
My
heal?
eyes are already big to begin with, so they're like
popping
out.
Here you go. What are your techniques? What do you do? What are your thoughts on that? And how do you help somebody heal? So if I were to come see you, by way of an example, I had a heart attack when I was 37 and I'm sitting before you, what would you do with me?
Oh gosh. That's a great question. I think I like to look at it as a number of different approaches you can use here. Number one is I like going to the root cause. Now I'm not a doctor, so when I say root cause, it's like, well, what coronary artery was blocked, or what, I don't know that.
But as a transformation coach, right, as somebody who deals with NLP, health and wellness, trauma, what would you do?
I love, when people come to me and they're like, okay, I've had these, 5 years ago I was diagnosed with this, or 10 years ago I had, I broke my arm or whatever. I always like to take a look at, because the mind and the body are one, and as well as the soul. And so I always take a look at what was happening in your life at that time. On an emotional level, what was happening? On a spiritual level, what was happening? Yes, the physical level, I like to leave that to the doctors. But let's look at the other components involved. Was there a significant life event going on at that time? 9 times out of 10, it's a yes. and what emotions were going on at that time. What decisions were you making in your life? And often people are like, oh, they were struggling to make a decision, or they were at a place of defeat.
Mhm.
And so often I see physical manifestations of, health ailments happen when the mind and the soul are kind of tapped out, are
Mhm.
kind of burnt out. They're
Mhm.
like, I just need a spot on the bench. And because for whatever reason in society, it's so acceptable to take a physical break. But if I was to come into work and say, I'm battling with some internal conflict in my soul, can I have the week off? People will be like, what? Or, I'm dealing with some mental and emotional, I'm trying to find my purpose in life. Would you mind if I take a few days? It doesn't work that way. But if I was to say, I have a headache, I need a few days off, that typically works, especially now more than ever, with this whole, like, let's be cautious about what's going on in the world when it comes to our physical health, that's even been more amplified. So I like to take a look at, what's going on at that point in that person's life. And did they feel like they had no other choice but to manifest some kind of physical symptoms so that they could take a break? They could take a spot on the bench. I did. I manifested 5 different autoimmune diseases because I was like, I just don't want to play life right now. Like, I just need to figure some stuff out. And the only way I could do that is if I physically take myself out for a bit.
Mhm.
And that's what I did. And so I often see that. So one is like,
In my day, it was called figuring your out.
yeah, am I allowed to say that?
I don't know, but
Get your
but that's okay. It's
group in a
all
group.
good. You
Get
know,
your
you
group in a group.
yeah, you would figure your stuff out there. That's what it meant in my day. Because
Yeah.
you would sit and you had your legal pad and you're figuring out this and that, finances, and what do you want out of life, or whatever it is. Kind of like what I had said to a family member that you and I were talking about.
Yeah, I love what you said that earlier. You have to decide what you want. I think a lot of people just don't know what they want. And so they will take a spot on the bench physically.
What do
So
you
yeah,
want? What do you want out of life?
what do I, oh gosh. It- in NLP, we do something called core values. We look at your core values because out of your core values becomes all of your behaviors and actions, right? I can have a 5-minute conversation with you and I can figure out what you value in life just by listening to the way you talk.
Mhm.
Because those core values stems everything. For myself, what do I want out of life? I want impact. I want to impact people. I want to ignite radical change. People are like, oh, that's such a nice cliche thing. But no, seriously, when I did my values test through NLP, it's like impact, influence, impact, influence, impact. I really want to just
Mhm.
impact and influence people. But, I also really, really, really love connection.
Mhm.
And we're so disconnected. And when I say connection, I want connection with myself first, on all levels, spiritually, sexually, emotionally. I
Mhm.
want to connect with me because there's only one of me. And if anything, should hit the fan tomorrow, I only got me. So I want to be connected to me, to
Mhm.
my mind, my soul, my body. And then I want to be connected to other people. And I want to have those deep relationships, those deep, meaningful relationships where you can really open up and have incredible discussions, like kind of like the discussions we've been having, right? Like, I think that's important because you can impact, inspire, and really create something when you connect. So that's what I want. I really want connection,
I love that.
impact.
That's great. Yeah. When you have a client sitting before you, right? You said that you're not the doctor, so you don't do the physical thing, but you're looking at spiritual or mental. Over the last year, is there a theme or a common thread that people are coming in with deficiencies, we'll say, in their spiritual or their mental life? Me being the doc, I look at deficiencies, I look at vitamins and minerals. I say, oh, you're deficient in vitamin D. Vitamin D can help you out with this, this, and this. So you need to take some vitamin D. Okay. Has there been a common theme of deficiencies spiritually or mentally over the last year and a half, 2 years?
Yeah.
Tell
Yeah.
me. Tell me.
I would say everybody that has been coming to me is in a place of burnout. Defeat is a huge one, especially coming out of the pandemic. Defeat. And it doesn't matter what side you're on, pro, anti, whatever. Everybody feels
That's
burnt.
all irrelevant because everybody's feeling
Yeah, defeat. Honestly, so many people are their lives are imploding, and they're doing it themselves because they know there needs to be a change and a shift. And it's like it's the sense of losing control. And as well as that, is a lot of people coming to me, what's the point? A lot of people's eyes have awoken in the last couple of years. And it's like, what's the point? This doesn't work. What we've been doing for 5, 10, 50, 100 years isn't working. What's the point? And so they're having to reevaluate a lot of their values and their beliefs and make those huge transitions. Lots of people breaking up in relationships. I would say that is another huge symptom. People coming to me and it's like, my 20-year marriage ended. This person in my life, I don't have time for anymore. I'm tired of my mom's BS. I need to fix this. Like, a lot of people are coming to the brink of huge breakthrough. So many clients coming to me, it's time I forgive my ex. It's time after 10, 15, 20 years. And that's been a symptom of, I think, people realizing they don't have the capacity to hold on to old baggage anymore.
Yeah.
Worried about whatever is being thrown at us through the news now. We're worried, do we have enough food? Is there another thing coming at us? Is something else going to make us sick? Is there a flood? Like, everybody is so worried.
Right.
They don't have the capacity to worry about what their mother-in-law said to them 7 years ago. They want that out of their head. They want that gone. They want the emotional release and the spiritual release. So many people coming to me, I just need this karma paid off. Look at karmic debt here. I realized I effed up. Can you help me clear this off my karma chart, whatever that is.
There's only one thing to do when it comes to the in-laws, is just don't see them. Then you won't have to worry about it anymore. So that's even
boundaries.
There you go. Boundaries. You haven't seen my family in 20 years. Well, boundaries, honey. Anyway.
Totally. Do what you got to do to protect your mental health, right?
Yeah, that's right. So you talked about defeat, in my mind and how I grew up. I don't know if there's any such thing as defeat. I don't know if there's any such thing as losing. You're always learning and always growing. What are some of the top 3 things that people are defeated about? I mean, their career, why, their marriage, why? What is it that they're feeling defeated about?
A lot of people, your generation is tough.
Talking about my generation.
Yeah.
That was a song from.
I'm going to say it. Yeah. The Gen X isn't up, the baby boomers. You guys went through some stuff. You went, and your parents went through way bigger stuff. And so I feel like you guys kind of had the grit to handle some things thrown at them. Gen X and down, it's a gray area. It depends how you grew up. Some of you had boats, some of you didn't. But for the most part, you had it pretty easy. And, when poop hits the fan, like a lot of people have experienced in the last 2 years, where jobs have been threatened, everything, you name it. A lot of people have come to the place of, do I have choice? What do I do? And because we've relied on systems and outside resources for so long, when those outside resources become affected, people get scared.
They do.
Because here's the thing, and I think I talked about this in the other podcast, is that the system, like, nobody, when you were little, nobody said to you, like, when you fell down and got hurt, your mom didn't rush to you and say, hey, Danny, you're going to be fine, because your body knows how to heal. Let's put a little bit of salve on it. Let's send it some love. Here's a kiss. It's going to be okay. Instead, it was like, let's go get the tetanus shot. Let's go get a Band-Aid. Let's get an X-ray. And you're taught from the very beginning that you need to rely on an outside source to heal you. Okay, that works. I think that's called capitalism a little bit.
Mhm.
I think that also works in other areas, right? Oh, look at every area like insurance. I don't have if something was to happen to me, who's going to take care of me? I need to have health insurance. I need auto insurance. I need this insurance, which is great. It has created a bit of a safety, but we've become codependent.
Yeah.
So now when things happen, we've lost all sense of reality in, oh my gosh, like, what do I do when bad things happen? Because I have been taught to rely on a system. So what if the system fails me? What do I do? I'm in Canada right now. We're experiencing flooding and the shelves are empty. And we live 5 minutes from the ocean and 7 minutes from the border. We have access to so many resources and people are going crazy because it's like, oh, we've been taught to rely on 7 meals a day, taught to rely on, the extravagance that we forget. I'm like, yo, you guys are fighting at the grocery store. Did you know there's a berry bush down my street? Like, I am not concerned
Right.
about, like there are so many resources. So the defeat comes from a place of autonomy. Do I have options? Who am I? Do I have the capability, the abilities to take care of myself if something was to happen? And most people go, I don't know how to take care of
I think
myself.
this is very important what you're talking about. Now, I'm not a psychologist or a therapist or whatever, but I can tell you when I was growing up, I'm a boomer. When I was growing up, I can come home and I can say to my parents, I'm bored. It's the summertime. They're going to sit there and they're going to say, figure it out.
Right.
They would say, figure it out. Right. Or my mother would get, growing up in the city that I grew up in, she would sit there and she didn't mean it, but it was a joke in the family. Go throw yourself in front of a bus on Broad Market Streets in downtown Newark, meaning I don't want to hear it. Go figure it out. Right. If I cut my finger, my hand was, hanging off. It was funny. I mean, I laugh at it now, but my mother or my father would look at it and they go, oh, yeah, you cut your finger. Come here. Let me see. They look at me and they go, you're going to live. You're going to live. And guess what I do with my son? Dad, I shot the puck hard today because everybody knows he plays hockey. My hand hurts a little bit. Can you take a look at it? Look at it and go like this. You're going to live. And he looks at me and goes, you always say that. I said, what do you want to do with it? Figure it out. I say, what is it that you should do? I get it. You want dad or mom that, they want that person to take a look at it, right? And make sure it's okay. Okay, I looked at it. You're going to live. I should put some ice on it. Yeah, it's a good idea. Then I leave it. He dropped a cornhole thingy on his foot a couple of summers ago. Toe came off and it's just, I said, you still got to train. He said, you can't run right now because you can't, right? They said, your toenail came off, you're going to live, not the first time that this happened in the world. And, I said, now you got to figure out what you need to do to train.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and goes, I don't know. I said, okay. I said, go in your room, get your marble notebook pad, write down what you think you need to do, and then come back to me. And it goes back, I think, to what we were saying. There's this defeatist attitude. You have a choice. You feel like you're losing control. Because I circled defeat, I circled losing control, then I circled choice. You have a choice. You can make it work for you, and you don't make it. So we came back and he said, you know what? I can do a lot of upper body stuff. I said, yes, you can. I said, you're not of the age where you're going to pump iron, but you could do your push-ups and you can do your sit-ups. You can do body weight exercises. You can even do a leg workout. I said, you could do squats, even though your toes got a little pain there. I said, I understand you may not be able to run a mile in 7 minutes. You may not be able to run 3 miles. It may hurt a lot, right? I get it, but you could do squats. You could shoot. You can do whatever. You can play, you can throw the ball with me. We could play baseball. You can sit there and I can pass you the basketball and you can go in an arc like we used to do for hours on end, I said to him. And you can shoot hoops and you can do something physical.
Yeah.
I said, you can do 100 push-ups right now. Maybe you do 10, then you do another. I would give you 10 seconds break so you get a cardiovascular workout along with that. So burnout, I get it. Defeating, I don't get. My generation doesn't compute, because when the pandemic hit, of course, within the household, how are we going to pay the bills? Just going to pay them. I mean, that was my attitude. It wasn't like, okay, I was deemed essential, but that doesn't mean that patients want to come in either.
Yeah, exactly.
So using that prefrontal cortex, I'm like, it's just going to work. What do you mean? I'm just going to work, I said. I'm just going to work. That's when telehealth came about. That's when it was always here, but you just pivoted. It wasn't like it was something that was like this earth moving thought process. It was like, okay, we're just going to do this now. That's all. So my partners and I, that's what we're doing, right? So that trauma, talk about trauma. Talk about trauma.
Well, I was just going to say, you mentioned the prefrontal cortex and that, it lit up and you said, we got to do something here, which is great. However, when there is trauma, that prefrontal cortex will be either immobilized or go into a hyper state, right?
Guess what? I'm doing a 2-minute video later today or tomorrow morning on that, just to let you know.
Wow.
So there you go. You can take a look at it. So what does trauma do to our decision-making process?
It really puts us in a stress response. And, that's the fight or flight, the parasympathetic, and the sympathetic nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, it tells us to either freeze, run, all that stuff. And when that happens, when your body's in a survival state, it shuts down and it goes to irrational thinking, right? It goes into, okay, I need the basics. I need to breathe. It's looking for the basics. I need food, shelter. I need to be
food, shelter, elimination.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are like the 3 big things when it comes to, when you're in this, right?
Right. And so your ability to think long term is minimized, right? It's you're not thinking about a week from now, 2 weeks, a month, a year, 2 years. You're thinking right now. It forces you to freak out in the moment. You're thinking, how am I going to survive this?
That's right.
Which is great. But the problem is when you make decisions in that state, they're very ego-based, because they need to. And the ego is not wrong. If you've heard me speak before, the ego is not wrong. It keeps you alive. But they're very ego-based, very in the moment, in the present, very survival-based, which is great. However, the consequences of staying in that state, I like to say to clients, a decision bound in fear binds you to a new fear, right? And we've seen so many people react from the pandemic, and then you see them when they calm down, like a year later, a few months later, and they're going, yeah, I really regret that decision. Yeah, I don't know why I did that.
You know what? This is something extremely important. So for all of our listeners, because I can tell you, once all of this started, and it was like, how is food going to be put on the table and all of that stuff like that, furniture is going to be sold, and this is going to be sold, and that's going to be sold, and everything is going to be sold, and we're going to live in desolation, because that's what's being communicated right now. And I'm just calm, and I go, no, I'll find a way. I may, even if I didn't know what to do, or if somebody didn't know what to do, you're going to find a way, because the trauma of what happens, you need to sit down, take a step back, go easy, and then from there, you can start making some good decisions, because you never want to make a decision when you're stressed, right? You never want to do that. That's the worst thing, because you're going to say, never should have done that before, right? And now it becomes that much more magnified, right?
Yeah. I mean, I have so many clients that have come to me and go, I don't know why I chose that. I'm going, I know why, because you were stressed. You were in a hyper state. You were in trauma response, stress response. You were thinking irrationally, how do I survive? And then when you take a moment and connect back into your body,
Mhm.
associate back into yourself and start to realize, okay, this is not that big of a deal. I have the tools and resources. And you start to look, 5 months, a year down the road, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal.
Right.
And, in the books that I've read and the research that I've done about why people, billionaires, and a lot of these successful people are so successful is because they're able to stay focused long term. The person that looks at their bank account and says, oh, I'm $300,000 below the line right now. They go, that's in the grand scheme of 20 years, that's not a big deal, because the goal is 50 million,
Right.
not to be at zero, right? And so it's amazing if people could actually just take a step back and go, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, it's going to be completely different.
I think it's kind of what you had said before. It's grit. Some people have that grittiness, and some people don't have that grittiness. I have friends that have, that have really been, hurt. We could talk financially. I'm not even going to talk the pandemic. I'm going to talk about 2008.
Right.
I'm going to talk about 2008, when the world economies were individuals, countries, economies, and collectively the world economy was falling apart, and people lost tons and tons of money. And we were heavily invested in real estate at the time. I started to get out because I sensed something was going on. Some of my partners did not get out. But one of the things that was interesting was that when it was all done and we were all looking at each other, we just looked at each other and said, okay, back to the drawing board. Let's do it again. There wasn't this doom or gloom. There wasn't the burnout. There wasn't the defeat. We didn't implode. We didn't feel like we lost control. There was an event that happened. We decided not to let that stop us. Let's learn a lesson or two, because they had to listen to me. They didn't listen to me, Sheryne. I told them to listen to me, but they didn't anyway. So then what happens is that we were calm, and we were able to go from here to here to here a lot quicker, because we weren't losing control. We weren't imploding. We didn't have that defeatist attitude. So that's how trauma, it looks at it from an emotional standpoint and mental standpoint, can really knock the heck out of you, right?
Well, that's just it. If you're saying, and we learned the lesson, you just said that. And if people could understand that when significant events happen, positive or negative, it's an opportunity to gather feedback. It's an opportunity to reevaluate and be like, okay, this is happening. I'm getting new information here. When, and back to the kind of the pandemic, when the pandemic was hitting, this is brand new information. What can I learn from this? How am I responding to this? Yes, this is scary. Can I put my fear aside for a few minutes, a couple days? And can I start to understand this is feedback for myself? What do I need to learn in this? Okay, I'm afraid. Ooh, even emotions are there to guide us, right? So what's the feedback with the emotion I'm experiencing? I want to go buy, a ton of blah, 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 because I'm scared. Okay, why? What do I need to learn in this? Okay, I feel unprepared. What can I do to feel more prepared without going to the side of fear? And so it's really about being able to talk yourself down from that emotional state, detach the emotion, knowing it's
100%.
and work through it and gather the information. What do I need to learn? And then, make a decision and take action. So that's, yeah. I love that you said that. I just wanted to touch on that, because we learned the lesson and we moved.
And I think success is this, not just in business, but in life, is because life is going to throw you a curveball. You're going to hit traumas and stuff like that. Could be a divorce. It could be somebody being diagnosed with cancer in your family. It could be a personal health event. Could be losing your job. How comfortable are you feeling? Are you being uncomfortable? Because you have to be comfortable. You gotta dampen down that fight or flight. You gotta dampen down the stress, because when you do that, I do believe that you're going to be able to I do believe you're going to be able to make better decisions, because those choices that you make affect you years down the line.
Totally.
I've been there, right? And so have you. So when was the last time you were stressed and you made a bad decision, Sheryne?
Oh, I make bad decisions all the time. And bad decisions I make.
Did you make a bad decision by coming on our podcast? I don't think so.
Not at all.
Not at all.
No, when I say bad decisions, I make decisions that give feedback to me all the time. And I'm learning, and I'm dedicated to learning about myself and about life. So it really depends on, it's all perspective, bad decisions.
Mhm.
I think I'm very impulsive as a person, as an individual. And
Mhm.
so I've made a lot of impulsive decisions in my life, but I've also learned that that is a survival mechanism. And
Yes.
so I'm really grateful, because my impulsivity has actually saved my tail and created a lot of opportunities that I
Mhm.
don't think a lot of people would have ever been able to experience. So I see that as the positive, is that I can be very impulsive. I can detach pretty fast and move on to what I need to move on once, especially if I'm committed to a goal.
Right.
So I'm trying to think, like, when have I made a really bad decision? I don't really let myself go there in my mind.
Mhm.
I think I've made decisions that a little too soon. I wouldn't say they're bad decisions, but I think if I had waited, I would have positioned myself to make the transitions easier. Meaning I moved during the pandemic to a different province. I love that I made the decision. I wish I had spent a little more time making my transition easier, because that was a bit more traumatic than it needed to be. And I realize that now. But I'm grateful, because it always works out. It always works out.
It does. Now, so let me ask you, how does trauma affect somebody physically when you're dealing with a client? What do you see?
And again, I'm not going to go into the physiological stuff, because I do want to leave that to, psychotherapists and those that are licensed. But I say, from an emotional and spiritual standpoint, those that have been through trauma or going through trauma I often see one of the biggest symptoms, they're just dissociated. They're very scattered. They're not able to remain eye contact with me. They're looking around. They're in a hyper awareness state. They're fidgety. They're stumbling over their words. Their thought patterns are all jumbled, and they're like, yeah, and I had this happen the other day, and I had this, and they talk really fast, and they just seem to be in a hyper awareness state of out of their body. And that's the biggest thing I see. And maybe not right away, because they're trying to put on that, I got my things together, even though I'm a therapist. They come to me and they're like, no, I'm good. And then it starts to unravel. And I can see that, okay, they're not even in their body. They're so dissociated. Also reflecting out there, yeah, and I had this happen. And if they're talking in third person, or they're like, yeah, and a lot of blame shifting, that tells me there's a lot of trauma going on. So
guess what? We got 5 to 10 minutes left, and I've only asked a couple of things. So I think we're gonna have a part 3 sooner than later.
Yeah, is it because I'm talking too much, or these just
really no, not at all. No, not at all. It's all very interesting, the way that this is. Have you ever heard of transgenerational trauma? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
That's like a new buzz term today, right? Isn't that like a new buzz term?
Yeah, I like to say like ancestral trauma, just because it has a bit more of an energetic spiritual component. I think a lot of it, if you want to do the research in it, Dr. Joe Dispenza, even Dr. Bruce Lipton, really going back to the basics of epigenetics when they started to talk about how they were seen in the grandchildren of veterans were exhibiting some symptoms of war trauma, like,
Mhm.
and they were going, why is that? And so they believe that the DNA can be affected,
Mhm.
2, 3, 4 generations up. And I also believe that. I mean, that's from an epigenetic standpoint. From a spiritual standpoint, too, I believe in just the morphic field, the morphic resonance, and that's basically the energetic and thought field
Right.
coming from the family, which can be implemented through patterns or through energy, comes down through the line as well. If and here's an example, if your great grandparents were poor and then your parents were poor and now you're poor or struggle with money, there could be an ancestral trauma there, right? That's
Mhm.
just passed down. Really a belief system that is it's so powerful that it's now having effect on the bloodline.
It's just passed down, right?
Yeah, I do see that all the time, especially when it comes to I like heavy thought patterns.
Yeah, tell me about that. What do you see when it comes to the ancestral trauma? What's going on?
What do you mean by that? What do I?
So, when somebody comes in and you're thinking that there is this trauma, what is it? What is it? How do you deal with somebody like that? And what do you find? What are they saying to you that tips you off that there could be this ancestral, this transgenerational trauma?
Um, Often if it's either because it's a pattern in the
Mhm.
family, so that's a dead giveaway, right? Like, oh yeah, my great grandfather was, uh, a hunter, and my dad, whatever it
Mhm.
is. I'm just using an example for the sake of the audience, but so there's that obvious pattern. A lot of the times, my grandmother had an abortion, my mother ended up having an abortion, I've had an
Right.
abortion. That's the huge one that comes up a lot.
Really interesting.
Yeah, that's a huge, huge one. The other one I would say finances, my parents lost their house and now I'm filing for bankruptcy. That's a big
Right.
one. And I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some researchers out there that say, oh, well, that's just behavioral. That's just a learned behavioral thing. But I think it goes deeper than that. The other one that comes up a lot is when clients come to me and there's a perfect bill of health. I've had a few clients
Mhm.
come to me where, doctors, lawyers, come from a very prestigious family, educated, grandparents were doctors, lawyers, whatever, and then all of a sudden their child is sick,
Mhm.
and like there's no sign of health
Right.
issues. That tells me too, okay, there's something unlocked in the bloodline here that needs to be taken a look at energetically and spiritually. um, yeah, people might say, oh, yeah, there's epigenetics there too. And maybe a gene was switched on. Sure. I'm not talking the physical side. I'm talking that there typically is an energetic or spiritual component that I like
Right.
to take a look at. So,
You know what? We're going to have a part 3 and we're going to pick up with, and I'm good at this. Like, we're going to stop here and then we're going to keep them hanging. It's kind of like the old Batman show where it's like, oh, holy moly. It's like, what's going to happen next? Pow, boom. So, I think we're going to pick up a little bit more with transgenerational ancestral trauma, ancestral trauma, and then we're going to go into some other different types of things. If you're up to a part 3, Sheryne.
yeah, I love talking about this stuff. So,
Yeah, this is very interesting. So for those of you that are listening out there today, we're going to stop here today because we're at about 45 minutes. I think we'd like to keep our podcast around 45 minutes, and we're going to pick it up. And when we get off today, Sheryne and I will pick up another part 3, probably next Monday, I would assume, and then we're going to release this one on Thursday, so that everybody can listen, or maybe Wednesday, and I'll send Sheryne a copy of this so that she can get it out to her audience in addition to. So I want to thank everybody for listening. Sheryne, these are great conversations. I love these conversations. Thank you very much for coming on again, and let's go for part 3.
oh, thank you so much, Dan. Yeah, these are great conversations that need to be had. So, thank you.
Awesome. Want to thank everybody for being on, for listening today. Our podcast is growing because we have the best of the best of the best when it comes to guests. And we have Sheryne, so that says it all. Thank you very much, Sheryne, for coming on today. Let's do part 3, and let's motivate, educate, and inspire some more. And we'll see you all the next time. Thank you very much, Sheryne.